You know what nobody tells you about turning 100? It's that you stop caring about most things people worry about, but you start caring deeply about the few things that actually matter. I'm sitting here in my little house in Portland, Maine, watching the fishing boats come in just like I have for the past 73 years. And I'll tell you something that might save your life, or at least add a few good years to it. They always ask me the same question. Reporters, neighbors, my great-grandchildren with their phones pointed at my face. What's your secret? They expect me to say something about eating blueberries or doing yoga or drinking green juice, but that's not it. Not even close. The real answer is simpler and harder than any of that. And most people don't want to hear it because it means admitting they've been poisoning themselves for years. The one thing you need to avoid if you want to live longer? Constant worry, chronic stress, that gnawing, relentless anxiety that so many people wear like a second skin. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another old man rambling about the good old days, hear me out. I've buried 3 brothers, 2 sisters, my wife of 61 years, and more friends than I can count on both hands. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the ones who went early, the ones who didn't make it to 70 or 80, let alone 100, they all had one thing in common. They worried themselves to death, literally. My brother Tommy, God rest his soul, worked himself into an early grave at 58. Heart attack right there at his desk at the insurance company. He was always anxious about money, about what people thought, about things that might happen, but never did. Even when things were going well, he'd find something to stress about. What if the market crashes? What if I lose my job? What if? His body was like a car with the engine constantly revving. Eventually, it just gave out. My sister Margaret was the same way, though it showed up differently. She worried about her children, her grandchildren, every little thing. If one of them had a cold, she'd convince herself it was pneumonia. If they were 10 minutes late, she'd imagine car accidents. She developed ulcers in her 50s, high blood pressure in her 60s, and by 72, she was gone. The doctors called it a stroke, but I knew what it really was. Years and years of her body being flooded with stress hormones, her nervous system never getting a break. Me. I decided early on that worry was a waste of time. I'm not saying I never felt stress. Of course I did. I worked on the docks for 42 years. Heavy labor, dangerous conditions, uncertainty about whether there'd be work the next week. I raised 4 kids on a dock worker's salary. There were lean times, scary times. But somewhere along the way, I learned something that changed everything. It happened when I was about 35. My youngest daughter, Amy, got real sick. Meningitis. The doctors weren't sure she'd make it. I spent 3 days in that hospital, and I could feel the worry trying to eat me alive from the inside out. My hands were shaking, my stomach was in knots. I couldn't eat or sleep. And then, on the 3rd night, sitting in that uncomfortable plastic chair watching her sleep, it hit me. My worry wasn't helping her. Not one bit. It wasn't making her better. It wasn't protecting her. All it was doing was making me useless. So I made a decision right there. I decided to do everything I could to help, talk to the doctors, be there for her, pray if that's what made sense. But I let go of the worry itself. I let go of that terrible feeling of trying to control something I couldn't control. And you know what? She got better, pulled through like the fighter she is. But more importantly, I got better. I learned how to separate caring deeply from worrying destructively. After that, I applied it to everything. When the fishing industry changed and dock work dried up, I didn't panic. I found other work. When my wife got diagnosed with cancer, I was there for every treatment, every hard day, but I didn't let the fear consume me. I chose to be present instead of anxious. When the stock market crashed and our savings took a hit, I figured we'd adjust, and we did. When my son went through his divorce, when my granddaughter struggled with addiction, when the roof needed replacing and we didn't have the money, every single time I asked myself, Can I do something about this right now? If yes, I did it. If no, I let it go. That's the secret nobody wants to hear because it sounds too simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. Learning not to worry is like learning any skill. It takes practice, repetition, failure, and trying again. Your brain is wired to worry. It's how our ancestors survived. But here's the thing. We're not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore. Most of what we worry about never happens. And the things that do happen, we usually handle better than we thought we would. I've watched stress kill more people than cigarettes ever did around here. I've seen men have heart attacks at 50 because they couldn't let go of the pressure. I've seen women develop autoimmune diseases because their bodies were constantly in fight or flight mode. I've watched worry steal people's joy, their health, their time with their families, and ultimately their lives. The science backs this up now, though I didn't need science to tell me what I could see with my own eyes. All that cortisol flooding your system, the inflammation, the wear and tear on your cardiovascular system, the way chronic stress literally shortens your telomeres and ages you faster. It's real. Worry doesn't just feel bad. It physically damages your body. Living here in Portland, right on the water, I've had a lot of time to think about this. I watch the ocean every day, and it reminds me that some things just are what they are. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Storms come, storms pass. Fighting against it, worrying about it. That doesn't change anything except you. The ocean doesn't care about your anxiety. Life doesn't care about your worry. It just keeps moving forward, and you can either move with it or exhaust yourself fighting it. People think getting to 100 is about genetics or diet or exercise, and sure, those things matter. I've eaten reasonably well, stayed active, never smoked, but I know plenty of people who did all that and didn't make it to 70, and I know why. They carried the weight of the world on their shoulders when they didn't need to. They let worry eat them from the inside out. The other day, my great-grandson was here visiting from Boston. He's 28, works at some tech company, always staring at his phone. He told me he's seeing a therapist for anxiety, taking medication, doing meditation apps, the whole 9 yards, and he's exhausted all the time. I asked him what he was so worried about, and he started listing things. His career trajectory, his relationship, climate change, politics, whether he's living his life right, whether he's wasting his potential, on and on. I told him the same thing I'm telling you now. Most of that worry is borrowed trouble. You're living in a future that doesn't exist yet, suffering over things that haven't happened and might never happen. You're robbing yourself of the only thing that's real, right now, this moment, and you're killing yourself doing it, just a little bit every day. He looked at me like I was crazy, like it was that easy. It's not easy, I know that, but it is a choice, and it's the most important choice you'll ever make. Every day, multiple times a day, you choose whether to worry or whether to trust that you'll handle whatever comes. You choose whether to catastrophize or whether to stay in the present. You choose whether to let your mind spiral into fear or whether to bring it back to what's real, what's here, what's now. I'm 100 years old, and I can still walk down to the harbor without help. I can still cook my own meals, read the newspaper without glasses, remember the names of all 17 of my great-grandchildren. My mind is sharp, my heart is strong enough, and I wake up every morning grateful. That's not luck. That's not just good genes. That's the result of 100 years of choosing, as often as I could, not to let worry run my life. So if you want to live longer, really live longer, not just exist for more years, but actually be present and healthy and enjoy your life, then stop poisoning yourself with chronic stress and worry. Learn to let go. Learn to trust. Learn to be here now instead of suffering in an imagined future. Your body will thank you. Your mind will thank you. And you might just find yourself sitting on a porch in Maine 70 years from now, watching the boats come in, feeling grateful for every single moment you decided to choose peace over panic. That's it. That's the secret. Now stop worrying about whether you can do it and just start.